Hi, I'm Dave from Boyinaband.com, and welcome to day 6 of the 7-day song on Hardstyle. Yesterday we added the last sounds to our track, and today is all about the arrangement. I learned what I'm about to tell you from doing critical listening, basically listening to a Hardstyle song and writing down notes saying how long each section lasts for, what new elements are brought in, that kind of thing, then comparing them all and making a judgment. And I definitely advise doing this yourself, just because it makes you really think about how to arrange your track, plus you get to listen to a bunch of Hardstyle. So the main thing I noticed is that unlike most dance music genres, Hardstyle tends to have several varied parts within the same song. Genres like electro house and dubstep tend to have very similar drops done twice. Now Hardstyle is much more open to interpretation and generally has at least 2 completely different drops in the same track, from what I heard. So, let's go through how I've arranged our track. First, we've got our intro here for 16 bars, followed by a mini drop, first kind of one where the kick drum comes in. Then we've got our first breakout and build into the main drop for 32 bars, plenty of fills to keep it interesting. Then we've got the second breakout build, which is just 16 bars this time, keeps the energy going by not having it too long, into the final drop, which is different, I'll call it drop 2, and then the outro, which is using the same block, which is another 16 bars. And as you can see, there's lots going on, apart from what's in those blocks, that keeps the track changing, so the listener's attention is maintained. Now I've used 3 blocks in Reason 6 because it's a really convenient way of arranging. If you want to change one thing that you don't have to go through and copy and paste a bunch of clips, you can just do it within one of the blocks and it changes all of them, which is really, really useful. And those 3 blocks, there's the not drop, the build, which doubles as my intro, the drop, which I've muted the Hardstyle kick on this first mini drop just to make it a bit less intense, and so the main drop sounds comparatively more intense, and I've got drop 2, which just has a different melody to drop 1 for the final drop and the outro. Let's go into some more specific detail then, and really start to break this apart. So to start, we've got that crash there, and then we filter in the ARP with those techniques I taught you in day 4. Got a nice little melody that changes up just before the drop hits as well. You can see there I've added in a variation, just going down to this semitone for a bit of extra tension. Anyone that's heard my other tracks will know that's something I do a lot. Such a good way of making the drops more satisfying when doing melodic genres like this. I've also got the decay opening up on this filter envelope just before that first drop, which kind of makes it feel like it's simultaneously getting less and more intense. Nothing like a bit of multiple personality disorder in your automation. And the lead has been muted, as you can see here. Simply drawing a blank clip over the note lane where the block is making the tracks appear, just to do that. Such a nice workflow with blocks in Reason. Then we're bringing the pads partway through, as you can see, and the claps, not the snares at this point. Again, by restricting the amount of things that build up, it makes those elements more impactful later on when they come in. So yeah, as I said, starts on a crash, and we've got that reverse before the first mini drop. So let's take a look at that. So this kicks in. And the lead and kick are still muted, as I mentioned, but the bass and sub come in here for the first time, so it does feel like something has kicked in. 8 bars in and the claps begin. That sounds like a Hardstyle lyric. And then 4 more and we bring in the snare as well, just on the same rhythm as the clap. You don't want the start of your tracks to be too complex and layered, or the DJ spinning it will have a nightmare trying to make it fit nicely with the outro of the previous track. So then it goes into the first build, which is where the kick drum drops out. You have a few punctuating it to kind of drive it along a bit. And here is where we start to get a little bit more interesting with the arrangement, crashing out to just the ARP filtering in here. And the reverse brings us to the lead for the first time, which comes in there, along with the now fully opened pad. You can see I've brought up the decay a bit on the filter envelope to make it even more intense. Then 8 bars later, the sub comes in here, just making it really powerful and tense, just on one note, that root F sharp that everything revolves around. The claps come in here again, building it nicely, followed by their snares to continue the build. And then for the final 8 bars of this 32 bar build, we have everything filtering down, and you can see that I've just looped the first part of the lead here, and this simulates that stuttering loop effect you generally get before a big drop, so it mentally informs the listener that something big is about to hit them in the face. And then the ARP goes to one note as well, as does the pad. Well, 2 notes, 1 chord, again revolving around the F sharp. And it all filters down until the reverse comes in and at the last minute, last bar, the filter comes all the way up, and all of a sudden that huge vocal sample hits, and this brings us to our first drop. Now the hardstyle kick hits for the first time here. You can see it's not muted. And the bass comes back in with the sub. We've got our layered kick, and the pad in as well, which I've put in here for some extra goodness. Those effects are consistently going on down there, only changing positions where we have little fills going on, just to kind of emphasize those, which I'll talk about now. Hardstyle drops are frequently interspersed with these fantastic fills that involve weird syncopations of the beat and melody that usually feel like the music has tripped over itself or something. I love it. So let's zoom in and have a look at the first fill. Now here we've got this pump da bass vocal. I've just cut it up from the original random braze pump da bass vocal, which I've put every 8 bars in some form or another, just so that hook can really come through in the drops. And then the first beat you expect after that is missing. Followed by a triplet into the next beat. As if it kind of forgot that it was meant to play and then rushed into line, which I generally picture mentally when I'm making these. That crazy scatterbrained hardstyle kick, it tries its hardest, bless it. I've also muted the bass and the sub at that point, just to really emphasize the brief quietness there. Now the next fill is considerably longer and a more interesting syncopation. Again, we've got the kick and the hardstyle kick layered here. The lead drops out, just got the 1 notes there, and then the reverse kick brings it back in there. Take a listen to that. These effects are all adding to the emphasis, with the small crash indicating the start, then this big boom when everything comes back in again in earnest. And I also introduced the ride with that unmuting the mixer technique that I showed you all the way back in day 1. And that continues to build along with the clap. Last up for the final 8 bars, we bring in the snare, and we reverse into the second build. Now this is similar to the first one with the claps and the snares and the effects. It's just a bit shorter and no epic middle break because we want to keep the song moving. Now we've got our party goers moving from the first drop. The main difference is that it filters down the ARP here. At the same time we filter in this new lead riff. So that sounds a bit like this. The second drop is completely different melody-wise, remember? Now this lead riff is all triplets, and it plays about with octaves. So we've got the lower octave and then the higher octave. Now portamento really emphasizes that jump. Now the progression I'm used here is very similar, it's just adding in this A up here. So we go from F sharp to A, then down to D, and then to the E. Just makes it a bit happier. Hardstyle is a fun genre, so this fits nicely. And it's really bouncy as well, so many triplets. Fantastic. And then it goes into drop 2, as you heard briefly there. And we've got the bass doing the same progression as I showed you just then in the low end of the lead. And also, there's no hardstyle kick. We've just got this kick going on, a new one. Now this is just a sample I found. You can get a lot of these kicks with the extended kind of whooshy noise at the end in hardstyle. So I wanted to show you this. Just find a sample with it in. And the second drop isn't as long as the first. This is the drop, and then this is basically where the outro begins. Again, we're just having one last little burst of energy before the song ends. And the same build with the claps and the snares that we're so used to, filtering down the lead into this outro. Just removing the sub, muted there, and then the bass, which I've made more simple. You can see it's just a F and then one little cheeky E note in there. That just makes it more tense so we can start building some intensity for the next track, the DJ spins. And then we have a throwback to the vocal in there just before it starts to completely end. And finally reversing into this boom and a final crash hit. It just echoes out. Phew, what a journey. I'm pretty sure that covers everything. Remember, do your own critical listening and see which elements producers you like introduce at what points. Remember to think about the DJs that'll be mixing the track when making the intro and outro, and remember to keep changing things up as the track progresses, otherwise it'll be boring. So, there we have it. Arrange your track, don't forget to like this video, then meet me tomorrow in day 7, where I'll give some tips on mixing and mastering the song, and show you the final finished 7-day hardstyle song. Doodle pip.